Hey everybody, welcome back to the Meet the Makers podcast. Today I am so excited to be joined by our very first lady guest that we had on the podcast so far. Today I have Shanna from Pretzel Prints. First of all, thank you so much for coming on. I'm super excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. I did not know that I was the first girl to be on.
Yeah, I was super excited to have you. I don't know if you've felt this so far, but it seems like there's not a ton of women in the 3D printing space. I don't know why that is, but it really seems to be a very male-dominated hobby.
It really does. And I think at this point, I have found nearly every single other woman that is in the industry because every time I see one, I'm like, I'm going to follow you immediately so that we can be friends and talk about 3D printers. Obviously.
Yeah, same. But with that said, like we just talked about it, I feel like not a ton of women are in the 3D printing space. How did you come into this yourself and how did you get involved in the hobby?
Okay, so somebody got me a 3D printer, my first 3D printer for Christmas in 2019 or 2020. And I had no idea what it was.
Okay.
They made me close my eyes and I walked up to this thing and I was looking at it and I was like, cool, what is it? Like, I don't know. And then I was like, oh, is it a 3D printer? But in my mind, I had not actually thought of 3D printing very much ever. It was like this background thing. And so I didn't know what I was going to do with it. But everybody was telling me, they were like, oh, you can do something because my background is in graphic design and things like that. And so I was like, I think you're crazy, but okay. And now here I am. I have 9 printers and I'm running business, so.
It sounds like it worked out. So like somebody had it as a gift for you. When you first saw it, did you know, was it assembled and did you, like, how long did it take you to figure out what it was? Because I don't think if I first saw a 3D printer, I might not know exactly what it is.
I actually have the whole thing on video and I've thought about posting it to TikTok before, but I just haven't because it's so embarrassing because I walk up, I uncover my eyes and you can just see my face and the filament that was loaded into it, because it was the MK3. So the filament was like held from the top and it was a silver filament. So I went, oh, is it wire? No, it's not wire. And it only took me about a minute or two because I was like, oh, is it a 3D printer? And it was, but I still was very confused.
I guess ultimately it ended up being a great gift. You've certainly come a long way in 3D printing, and you have a really unique design style. For people who maybe don't follow you yet on social media, like when I first think of you, the things that come to mind for me are like your skulls, and you do these quite crazy balloon animals. How did you come into that aesthetic of your designs, and does that kind of align with like your style is you've always had it for like graphic design, things like that?
I have been an artist since I can remember. That was like what I wanted to do when I was a little kid, is I wanted to be an artist. So I would draw and I all the time was teaching myself to draw. But the things that actually really stood out to me that I really connected with were those darker things like the skulls and that creepy kind of fun aesthetic. And so that's what I always really liked to try to draw. I wouldn't say that all of my drawings were fantastic, but maybe I was just waiting to find my actual true calling, which is the 3D version of that. So yeah, I would say definitely my aesthetic for sure. In graphic design, it's hard to say because when you're designing logos and things for people, you have to stick with their aesthetic. So I didn't get to play with it very much in that regard, but Photoshop and art in general, absolutely.
Yeah, I also always, I've never done graphic design like formally or anything like that, but I remember as like a younger kid, all my friends were into like pink and Barbies and all kinds of cute stuff, and I had like skulls in my room and all kinds of like taxidermied animals and things like that. It was, like I said, when I saw your work for the first time, it was really cool to just see your kind of take on it.
Okay, so I have to tell you what that reminds me of, because when I was a little girl, it was the same thing. I was into the creepy stuff, and all of my friends were going to go as princesses for Halloween. And we were about 5, I want to say, and they were all little princesses in pink dresses. And I told my mom, I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to be something scary. And so I still have a picture. I should have, if I knew we were going to talk about it, I would have brought the picture, because I am painted white with blood all over my face and this big black wig, and all my friends are little princesses. But I was so proud. of that costume. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, it sounds like we had very similar childhoods, and hey, maybe that's why we're both got into 3D printing and are into what we do. Now, you said that you talked about in the graphic design side of things, when you're doing logos and things like that for other people, you more so obviously have to go into what they're looking for in their style. I know early in your projects that you were doing for Etsy, I saw you did a lot of Lithophanes, things like that, and really cool, really customizable. Maybe I guess to start out on that, for people who aren't familiar with what those are, can you talk people through what that is and how that works?
I can try. So a lithophane is a picture that is converted into a 3D model so that when you put light behind it, the picture looks like a sepia tone or black and white version of that image. And I make a lot of night lights, and I have a concept that I never finished. It's around here somewhere. One day I will have a very nice photo frame box for lithophanes, and I do a lot of window portraits as well. Yeah, getting into those, I lost my mind. I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, it still blows my mind when I see them, and I still don't quite think I can grasp how some of them like come up in color or sepia. It's wild to me. If you're listening to this and you've never seen one, you definitely have to Google them and look them up. But with that note, have you, as you're taking requests from people, have you ever had somebody make a really strange request for a lithophane? Or I guess, has there ever been one that stood out for you that was like just really special or you really enjoyed creating?
I keep waiting for the day that I'm gonna get one. I've had thoughts in my head of what people might send to my website, but so far, actually, it's just a lot of really good pictures and cute animals and babies and things like that. I haven't actually gotten anything very crazy. I got one that was it was funny. It was these two women on the beach making silly faces, but that's about it.
Hey, I guess I like that though. That's fun. I feel like it's been fun for me just as I was going back through your content, seeing all the different things that people had. And again, I mean, they're a really unique project that I think are a different way to display 3D printing.
I take it back. The only thing, it's not that interesting, but I did have one guy that had a request for a lithophane of two middle fingers like this for a window portrait that said "fuck you," and that's the only one, if that's anything.
That sounds like the type of lithophane I would be requesting, so I'm right on board with that guy. Now, for when you're getting back into the design side and you're learning 3D modeling and things like that, I think if I remember right from seeing your videos, you've been doing like modeling itself only for a couple, like maybe about 6 months or so. Is that right?
Yeah, now it is closer to 7.5 months, but yeah.
Okay. It actually, again, it blows my mind how far you've come in modeling in only 7 months. And I don't know if you attribute that to your background in graphic design, but did you find it a difficult learning curve getting started? I think you use Blender.
Yeah, Blender. Honestly, and I'm not even kidding, that process was a lot of tears and headaches. I would get so frustrated that I would have tears in my eyes and I'd just be like wanting to punch the computer. I didn't. That's why I'm still able to model, but it was very hard. And the beginning, I think, was the worst because I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know the layout in Blender, how to move around in Blender, and I'm stubborn, if that's the right word for it. And YouTube videos will only take me so far. I get annoyed very quickly. And so I was just like, I want to learn this myself. And I did use like a handful of YouTube videos here and there when I would need to figure something out. But 9 times out of 10, whatever they did not work for me, and I would just have to figure it out myself anyway. So I am also impressed with myself and very confused. Every time I make something, I have that, and I don't know, maybe it's like a mental condition, but I don't believe that I made it. Every single time I print it, I hold it, and because I've been 3D printing so long, I honestly just feel like I downloaded it and I printed it because I'm already amazed at that process. Yeah. And then to know that I also made it is just too much for my brain to handle, apparently.
It's interesting hear you say taking time to figure it out your own way as opposed like those tutorials. A lot of people that I've talked to so far, everybody seems to have gone through the donut tutorial. I don't know if you are familiar with the donut tutorial, but of course, many people seem traumatized from it.
The donut tutorial I actually did way before I ever wanted to learn Blender because my brother knows Blender and he was talking about it all the time, the donut tutorial. It's this iconic thing. And so I sat down and I did it for fun way before I ever touched Blender ever again.
Maybe it was for the best because, yeah, I also had some experience going through the donut tutorial, and that was one of my last times ever going into Blender.
Yeah, but the thing that scares people off about the donut tutorial and so much with Blender, and I cannot stress this enough, you are not going to use 90% of Blender. It is such a massive platform. And even in that donut tutorial, there are so many things that you're doing that are not compatible with 3D printing. And so you're learning all these extra things that you actually don't need to be learning if you want to use it for what we're doing. They're useful. They're useful to learn about the program itself and about navigating maybe. But what it's going to do more than anything, I think, is make it this big, overwhelming thing that it is, but it doesn't really have to be if you tackle it.
That makes a lot of sense. I think it's like the ultimate spaghetti monster. That just endless rabbit holes you can go down with it. And I guess for you, like having kind of that background in graphic design as well, did you find it like? I guess as you're making a model for 3D printing in mind, do you have to take certain things in consideration, not making pieces too narrow, or is there like a lot of tweaking that happens on that end for making sure that the model is actually like sound and functional?
Yeah, absolutely. While I'm designing, I'm constantly thinking about like when you pull something into the slicer and you pull the arrow down, you can see it print layer by layer. I am thinking of that in my mind because I want usually to be able to print without supports, which makes everything way harder because you have to keep those angles in mind. And so I'm constantly thinking about that. And then honestly, sizing has been the biggest issue for me because if I'm making something like recently, I've been trying to design a gecko. When I am making it in Blender, it looks absolutely massive. It looks so big on the screen. And then when I print it out, it's this itsy bitsy tiny little part that is 2 lines of filament that is not strong. And so I have definitely had to keep that in mind. I am constantly thinking of it while I'm designing and sometimes still messing up like with my little gecko legs.
Yeah, people who are able, I think it was actually one of the very first videos that I saw of yours. You were making an articulating snake, and I think maybe it was your first time making an articulated model, and now you seem like a pro at it, but it's one of those things where as somebody who has very limited experience with designing, oh, there it is.
That's the snake. The first snake.
Yeah, it's so cool to me how so much time and effort must go into just making those not just look good, but actually like move and functional. And do you find like you have to go through a lot of iterations of prototyping them over and over to get them just right?
So far, yeah. I'm very lucky if I manage to get it completely the way that I want it on the first try. With the Doomsday Dragon that I designed, first thing that I did was just make that simple joint. And I assume that's what most people who are designing do, is just make that very simple joint and test 3 of them, see if anything sticks, see if it's strong enough, do your stress tests. I have a whole box actually right next to me of bits and pieces. So if this is the Doomsday Dragon without any legs because I was testing parts of the body. I have a whole box full of test prints from joints, from parts that I was worried about. I have a dragon, the Doomsday Dragon, the first time its legs were so tiny that I don't know if you watch Rick and Morty, but it makes me think of Baby Legs Johnson because he looks ridiculous. It's a lot of trial and error and testing. And now I've started sending things out to test printers as well, which is so nerve-wracking.
When you say test printers, you mean other people in the community to like troubleshoot and give feedback on the models?
Yeah. So I offered the first opportunity to my patrons, and I said basically whoever wants to test models, if you want to be a tester, feel free. But I hadn't really been able to send anything out because I'm constantly catching up to myself and working so much. And so this was the first time that this month was the first time that I've sent out things to be tested by my testers and getting feedback. And it's a great process. It's a great way to see if the models work and on a range of different printers. But it is definitely nerve-wracking on my side of things. Just to hold my breath.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but that's actually a super cool way to be able to quickly iterate on those and get different people's feedback. And I never thought, until you just said it now, I never thought about this component, but Have you found maybe for somebody who's like printing on an Ender versus bamboo versus a Prusa, do people tend to have different experiences and different problems that they're running into then with those models that you create?
Yes, it depends. It depends. A lot, I think, goes into how they dial the printer in, but there will be slight problems depending. The biggest thing, though, is the filament. So for parts like that Doomsday head that I have, that the
Oh.
clip goes into the back, silk filament sometimes will expand more than regular filaments and it won't fit. It won't fit the way that it should. And to the point that I did a survey for my patrons and I was like, hey, is this a problem that everybody is having? Is it just some people? Or is it just some filament? And the feedback that I got was that it depends on the filament for them as well. So that I thought was very interesting, that silk would cause such a difference between matte or regular PLA.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. I'm still newer to 3D printing, but there's so much to learn. And like you said, just little things like that. I'll print something in one filament and it's great. And then I go and switch things up, and just like things that you wouldn't think would make such a big difference can sometimes have seemingly drastic effects. And maybe it's just me. My printers are chronically undialed in. So that it's very well also me.
I
But
highly
yeah,
doubt that
it's
somehow.
it's if anybody came here and saw my printers, I think they might be horrified at what they saw, because they're half the time just like a storage shelf, and then the other half of the time they're spinning up spaghetti. So it's always a fun dynamic over here.
I think that's just part of being in this community. Sometimes your printers are going to be a shelf, and sometimes they're going to be, you haven't cleaned your bed in probably way too long, or whatever it is. I am guilty of all of those same things. So you're not alone.
I'm glad. I'm glad. One of the things that you talked about when we were talking about building these models was sizing came up. Now, this is a different aspect of sizing, but one of my favorite videos and series that you had was making armor for your cat. What was that process like, sizing that to be correct for your cat? And I guess, what was their impression of the armor? Did they enjoy it? Did they maybe not enjoy it?
That was just something I was printing. I didn't actually design that one. I found it and I printed it, and I actually printed it in a very wrong size, to be honest. He did not wear it very well.
I definitely would not have been able to tell. He looked adorable. I also was not something he printed, but I believe he goes by the name of Mr. Cute Face, and there's a video of him wearing a straw hat that I watched at least 1,000 times. It's like one of my favorite videos on the entire internet. So I thoroughly enjoy any content involving your cats and their outfits that they have. They're absolutely fantastic.
That hat is actually just something that has been, I don't know why, but at some point when I was like 12 or 13, I put a straw hat on a decoration on the wall, and it just stayed there in this house forever. And so when I was thinking of making that video, I was like, I need cat clothing. And I thought of the hat, and it fit him perfectly. And yeah, I love that video too, because he's forced to be famous, as he should be.
Yeah.
He's over there sleeping.
He's a natural star for sure. I have to say he's. Now, we talked a little bit about you getting into 3D modeling, transitioning over, I guess, to the business side of things. I scrolled all the way back to the beginning of your content, and one of your first posts on there was just talking about starting a new business, and you were so excited about it. And I came into your journey partially through you already being on this journey, and it was actually making me like almost tear up. I was so excited for you, and it seems like things have come along so far. How has that journey been for you? Has there been ups and downs and struggles, and what's just been like your experience with that?
It is definitely a struggle. There are times when I think, what on earth am I doing? But it's been worth it, I think, at the same time. Taxes, of course, were daunting, and that was one of my biggest things, because I'm great at, I think there's like a Geico commercial that says this or something, but I'm great at this part of my business. I am terrible at the actual business part of my business, because that's the scary part, and keeping track of everything that I spend on filament and on that kind of stuff, and mileage, and all of the not fun parts of the business are definitely still something that I struggle with. I need to be more organized. I know that. I'm trying very hard in 2023 to stay organized. But it has been a lot of fun more than anything, I think. And I have definitely come a long way. When I started, I was just happy if I got one person to my website to see something. And my first order, I was like jumping up and down, and I was so excited. And that first video took off a little, or one of the first videos of me with a lithophane kind of took off, and I didn't have my website done yet. My brother is in charge of my website. He is my web designer, and so he was supposed to have been done already. And I was like, hey, I need a website yesterday because I have all these people that want to order now and no way to fulfill those orders. So he got busy, and about a week later, he had finished the website, and things took off from there.
That's awesome. And it's funny timing for you talking about not liking the tax side of it. It's actually tax day today for, by the time anybody watches this, it will be far past. So hopefully people filed their taxes.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I'm also right there with you. I was blessed that my mom, she's like she does accounting by trade, and I've always been horrible at that stuff. So it was always a blessing to have somebody who was of that mind. But yeah,
you're so lucky.
Yeah, it's definitely a really fortunate thing to have. It's brutal, but no, it truly was, like you said, I got to watch your journey from that first order and seeing how excited you were. And I loved it. For a while you had something going where you were tracking like all the different states that people ordered in, and it's an exciting thing to get to watch somebody grow and expand into that. Maybe for the people out there who are looking to get into selling prints for the first time, or just starting a business in general for the first time, do you have any advice that you learned along the way, or anything that you would do different?
I would say that the most important thing is to just start, because I put it off for so long, and I took so much more time than I should to get comfortable and ready to present everything. And be it because I'm a perfectionist or what it is, I think the most important thing is just jumping in and not getting in your own way, overthinking everything. That goes for design as well, because same thing. I sat there and I was like, oh, I'm gonna totally learn Blender. I'm gonna do it. But I was terrified, and I overwhelmed myself, and I overthought it. And so I didn't do it until 7 months ago, basically. So that's the most important thing, is to just do it. Outside of that, make sure that you keep your brand in mind. I think that's important, and that's definitely something that can be lost when it comes to 3D printing and 3D modeling. But if you look at it just like any other business, brand and logo, and making sure that people know who you are, what you're doing, what you represent, all of that stuff.
I think that's really great advice, and we touched on it in the beginning, but one of the things I really like about your brand a lot is I don't even have to see your face or see your logo on like the TikTok banner. As soon as I see a piece of content come up in my feed, I know it's yours. I just think you have a very defined style, and I think that's really cool, and it's definitely something I hadn't thought about it until you really said that. But do you find it difficult, as you, in a world where you sell prints, and a lot of people I know resell other people's models through Patreons and things like that, do you find it can be difficult to distinguish yourself and have that really strong sense of brand?
It definitely can be, especially when you are, if I do a show and I have all this stuff on the table from Matt Meyer Makes and Cinderwing and Flexi Factory and my own stuff, and it can be, but I think it just depends on how you do it. What I have done is all the models that I am designing, there's a little pretzel on the bottom. So if you look at the bottom of it, there's a little pretzel embedded in. It's my logo. And I think that helps a lot, because at a show, things get moved around, and whatever you put in a section on your table is not going to stay there. So even if you say, oh, everything right here I designed, it's going to move around. Kids are going to grab it. And so the easier thing to be able to do is to tell them anything with a pretzel on the bottom was designed by me. And then they know. They can look at it, they can see. So that has definitely helped me in that regard. But I think it's funny because each artist themselves, when they design something, they have their own style that comes through in that artwork regardless. And I see that in myself, even though it's not intentional, it's just how it comes out. And I see it for sure in all these other artists as well. So I think when you're really into it, when you're really in depth in it, you can look at a model and kind of see what artist created it. But maybe the average Joe is not going to do that.
No, I completely agree with what you say, and maybe it's just that I'm so deep into looking at all these files at this point. But like you said, like Matt Meyer Makes or Cinderwing, like you can just pick them out and you know right when you see it. Like I don't have to know whose model it is to know whose model it is. So it's definitely cool. And even from just people's styles of if they're doing multicolor or the filaments that they tend to do. Like you said, you can almost pick out people's styles amongst the same files. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense of what you're saying.
Yeah, in this community, for sure. If you're in the community, if you're in the 3D printing world, I think that's the people. That's the people who are going to be able to differentiate just by looking. But people off the street, obviously, they would have no idea. They'd just be like, oh, wow, you have a lot of different styles.
Yeah.
No.
For sure. Now, have you, in doing like you've done online, you sell your prints online, and then you've also done in-person events, do you favor one of those over the other?
I do, but for a really stupid reason. Because I really don't like having to package everything and then go to the post office with it. That's the whole reason. But in general, I probably like doing the in-person events more also, just because I can actually see people seeing a 3D printer for the first time, seeing something that's 3D printed for the first time, and I get to answer their questions. And it's that same amazement and wonder that I had on Christmas morning when I was like, and that first print, especially not really knowing anything about 3D printing before I got that printer, it was like magic. I watched this Triceratops skull just be created. And that's that same thing that they're getting. So it's good because it brings me back and reminds me of those first times and what it's like to see all of this stuff for the first time, which I think when we're in this community and doing this so much, we forget. And I get called out a lot too because I talk over people's heads all the time at events with words like even filament. They're like, what now? So I have to try to talk in a way that I would have understood before. Because if you're not in this world, you really miss a lot of the little terms and the ins and outs.
Yeah, it's so easy the deeper you get into it to just forget like what is and what isn't just common knowledge. And I think most things with 3D printing typically are not common knowledge for your average person. But it sounds so when you go to events, you actually bring a 3D printer with you and have it there, and do you run prints on it while you're there?
Yes. Every single time I bring one of my Prusa minis and I have a little enclosure for it that is chaotic. I have to get a new one. It's falling apart. But I have a little enclosure and the printer goes inside and usually I try to run a print that is the exact amount of time as the show that I'm doing so that while I'm packing up, it's finishing and then I have a print that I can take off and it's more inventory. That is something that I do at every single event because I think that no matter what, that is your sticking point. That is where your sales are going to come from. If you just have a bunch of 3D printed stuff, a lot of people are going to walk by, they're going to think, okay, yeah, toys, like, okay. But when they see the 3D printer, it brings them in and they go, oh my gosh, everything here is 3D printed. That is so cool. And then they have to get something. They're like, oh, I have to at least get a flexi hand pencil topper. This is so cool. And they ask questions and they get involved so much more. It's so much more hands-on. And the other really fun thing is when people are at a long event, little kids and adults too, but little kids especially, it's very cute to see them when they first see it and it's only a couple layers up. And then an hour or two later, that little kid is back and they're going, Daddy, look, it's got even bigger. And they're so excited. And then at the end of the night too, if it has finished all the way, which sometimes it doesn't, but if it has finished all the way successfully, they just lose their minds. They're like, oh my gosh, it's done. And they get so excited. And one time there was a little boy that had come back who again was just like absolutely amazed that it had finished. And I think he was one of the vendor's children, but I just gave him the print. I let him pull it off the bed and I gave it to him and his whole life was made, I think.
That's just, oh man, it makes me so excited hearing that, and it makes me hope that little kid like ends up getting into 3D printing because it's the first time you lay down a print, it really is honestly like magical. I remember just sitting there and watching my first print go down, and it's so cool. So I never thought about it from, being at like a live event, but honestly, it probably for you brings like traffic and like you said, just getting people interested, seeing the process and getting involved in that. I bet that's really just like a great thing to have there.
Oh, it definitely is. At this point, it is almost a necessity. I don't go without it, and I always find a way that I can power it, be it a battery-powered generator or a generator itself or really long extension cords. I always find a way because it definitely helps increase sales.
That's so cool. I love that. Transitioning out of the 3D printing space for a little bit, I believe we had seen a little bit before we got on this call, but Outside of 3D printing, do you work on, if I'm not mistaken, a dating app is like a different project that you do?
Okay, so it is actually my brother's project primarily. It's a team of us, but I would say he's definitely the one that is leading the whole thing. He's the one that is coding everything. He's self-taught in everything that he does, so web design and coding and everything, and I think that's very impressive. He's doing a fantastic job. And so he is leading that, and basically, yeah, we are, or he is trying to create a new kind of dating app that is going to solve the problems that people have with the current dating apps that are out there.
That's so cool, and that's awesome that you guys get to work together on that. It sounds like a really fun dynamic that you guys have together, and I love that he helped you with your website as well. I know I've used dating apps before, and I certainly felt like there were some problems with them. Are there, I guess for you guys, are there
Yes.
specific things that you're hoping to solve with what exists in those different dating apps right now?
Yes. So that is my brother's project for the most part, but there are a team of us that are helping to try to make it become something. Basically, what it is, my brother is coding for this dating app that we're going to try to fix the problems that come with a typical dating app. Fix those problems that people have with dating apps that make them something they don't want to use. So it's a ragtag team of people who are self-taught and want to see and make a change in that area.
I absolutely love that. I feel like I love projects of people who all come together and maybe they don't have the most expertise, but they're really passionate about what they're doing and they just find a way to make it work. And that kind of sounds like what you guys have going on over there. Plus, I love the dynamic of a brother sister duo working on something. That's a lot of fun. For you guys, I know for me, there's a million things I could think of that are wrong with existing dating apps. Are there specific problems that stand out for you guys that you're hoping to address?
Some of the things that he's trying to fix, the first biggest thing is that dating apps should not take your money and they should be 100% free with no paywalls. So it's not, hey, we're going to get you to sign up and we're going to get you to fill out all this information and really put care into your bio, and then we're going to ask you for money if you want to actually see people. So that's one thing, is that the goal and what we will do, the only way that we will do this app is if we can have it stay 100% free forever, because the idea and the passion behind it is not to make money. It's to fix a problem, because I don't know if you know this, but almost every single dating app out there is owned by the same company. So it's all about money. It's basically a big monopoly. That is something that we are trying to fight back against. Is, yeah, you might be a huge corporation and you might have all of this money, but we have what people actually want. So that is one of the big things. The other is being able to actually search for exactly what you want in another person and to find those things and only be shown those things. So instead of being shown a bunch of people, you say you want to see only people between the ages of 25 and 28. And all of a sudden you're getting a bunch of 20-year-olds and 35-year-olds, and you're like, why did I even put that in there if you're not going to follow it? So that is one for sure. It will be a platform for everybody, no matter what you are looking for. There will be a space for that. So if people are looking to be casual and just hook up, they're going to have a space for that. And you're going to know exactly what you're getting yourself into. So that's another big one. Catfishing, being ghosted, all of those problems, like women being completely flooded with choices and losing track of everything because there's just so many people, but also without limitations, without being like, oh, you're only going to be shown 5 people a day, because nobody wants that. Nobody likes that. And then the last thing, actually not the last thing, because there's so many more that I don't even know about. He's the one that did all these interviews and got all of these answers and has everything that we are trying to fix. But one of the last things, and things that I think will make it the most unique, is the actual setup of the dating app. So it is reminiscent of Club Penguin, kind of, in its own way. So it should be a very fun space to meet people and actually make whatever kind of relationship you're looking for.
Oh my God, your final piece of it that sold me. Love it. I absolutely love it. And it's so many of the things that you mentioned, they're, like you said at the beginning, there's just a lot of existing problems with current dating apps. So it's really cool to hear all the different things that you guys are doing. And I know we talked about how maybe you guys like don't have super formal backgrounds in doing things. And I'm certainly no expert, but my background is in product management and product development. So hearing you guys talk about like your process for looking for a very specific problem and doing those customer interviews, like when we talk about our product process, that's exactly what we do. So it sounds like you guys are on to something so cool and so amazing. And I'm so excited for all of you guys involved in that. It sounds like it's an amazing project.
Thank you. I really hope that it will be. We're launching very soon the website and all of the kind of crowdfunding, because that's how this thing is going to be launched. That's how it's going to happen, is help from a lot of different people. So you'll see us soon on TikTok. The app itself is called Koi. So like the fish, like a koi fish, or like being koi.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so it's called Koi. Look out for us. We'll be on TikTok and all of that stuff really soon.
That's the perfect space for it. I feel like a lot of people are looking to maybe find love or looking for something on TikTok. So I wish you guys nothing but the best. I think it's absolutely going to blow up and I'm super excited for
Thank
you
you.
guys.
We're actually doing a Patreon too. And because it's not about money, the way that we're looking for beta testers and everything is anybody that joins the Patreon, $1, $100, whatever they want, whatever tier they want to go into, they're able to be a beta tester just by doing that. So anybody that wants to be a beta tester that can go on, I don't know, he's going to do Indiegogo, I think, and I don't know, Patreon, but any donation, you can automatically be a beta tester, which I think is fun.
That's so cool. If you are out there and if you're frustrated with existing dating apps, you have to keep your eye out. You know where to go now. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today. I had such a great time getting to know you. I hope we get to know each other better, and certainly we'll have to do this again sometime. But where can people find you online, and where can people find your prints and just keep in touch with you?
Online, I primarily use TikTok, but I am on Instagram and Facebook as well. The only one, so I'm Pretzel Prints everywhere, but Instagram, somebody else was already Pretzel Prints. She draws pictures of dogs. It's wonderful. But so on there, I'm Pretzel Prints 3D. And then for my models, I'm on obviously Patreon, and I am on Colds 3D and Volcaza and Creality, and soon Things 3D as well. You'll see me doing something there pretty soon.
If for whatever crazy reason somebody's not following you already, please go follow Pretzel Prints. Thank you again so much for coming on. And with that said, that is me.
Yeah, thank you.